Imagine this. It's your birthday. The man you married, the man whose last name you took, whose children you carried, whose hand you held in hospital rooms and courtrooms and church pews, that man has planned a surprise for you. A weekend away. Just the two of you. No work, no diapers, no noise. Just a hotel in Hawaii, morning coffee on a balcony, and a sunrise hike to one of the most breathtaking views on Earth. You pack light, you put on your hiking shoes, you follow him up the trail because that is what you do. That is what trust looks like when it's healthy. You follow your husband up a mountain because you have never, not once, had a reason to be afraid of him. Now imagine the moment that changes. The trail narrows, the wind picks up, the cliff edge appears, 1,000 feet of open air straight down into the valley below. And the man walking beside you, the man you drove to the airport with, the man who booked the room, the man who said happy birthday this morning and smiled like he meant it, that man grabs both your arms and starts pushing you backward, toward the edge. This is not a story I made up. This is not a movie. This is what happened to a real woman, on a real trail, on her real birthday, in March of 2025. And what happened next is going to make you question everything you think you know about the people who love you. Her name is Arielle Konig. She is 36 years old. She is a project manager at a nuclear energy company founded by Bill Gates. She has 2 little boys, 2 years old and 4 years old, waiting for her at home on the island of Maui. Her husband's name is Dr. Gerhardt Konig. He is 46. He is an anesthesiologist, a physician who has spent his career walking into operating rooms and controlling, with precision, what goes into a human body. He knows which substances render a person unconscious. He knows which doses stop breathing. He knows exactly how much of what chemical does exactly what to a living human being. He packed 2 syringes before they left for the hike. Let that land for a moment. Not 1, 2, preloaded, hidden inside his hiking bag. Carried up the Puka Trail, one of the most notorious cliff-edge trails on the island of Oahu, alongside water bottles, sunscreen, and the ordinary contents of a day trip. A plan disguised as a birthday. And here is the detail that will not leave you. This man had a fallback. If the cliff didn't work, the syringes would. If the syringes didn't work, he picked up a rock from the ground and used it. 10 times. Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. This was not a marriage that snapped. This was not a man who lost his mind in a single moment of rage. This was a physician who sat down, thought through the problem, packed his solutions, kissed his sleeping children goodnight, boarded a plane, checked into a hotel, and then spent an entire morning pretending everything was fine, until the trail was narrow enough and the drop was far enough and no one else was close enough. And yet, she survived. Not because the plan failed, because of 2 strangers on a trail who heard a woman screaming and walked toward the sound instead of away from it. What happened on that cliff on March 24, 2025, is one of the most calculated, most chilling acts of domestic violence this country has seen in years. And almost no one is talking about it the way it deserves to be talked about. So today, we are going to fix that. We are going to walk every inch of this case, the marriage, the warning signs that, in hindsight, form a pattern so clear it is almost unbearable. The attack itself, the syringes, the phone call Gerhardt made to his own son, with blood still on his hands, confessing what he had done. The 2 women who saved a life by doing something most of us are trained not to do. And the unanswered question that sits at the heart of this entire case: what was he planning to do with those syringes? We are going to find out, or we are going to sit with the weight of not knowing. Because in some cases, that uncertainty is the most honest thing you can offer. Stay with me. To understand what broke on that cliff, you first need to understand what they were before everything fell apart. Gerhardt and Arielle Konig were married in September of 2018. By the time of the attack, they had been together long enough to build a life that looked, from the outside, almost unreasonably good. Gerhardt had credentials that commanded respect in any room. Medical degree from the University of Pittsburgh. Residency completed at UPMC, the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, one of the most respected hospital systems in the country. He had gone on to become a professor at the university before eventually relocating the family to Hawaii in 2023, where he joined the anesthesia medical group as a partner, a physician, a professor, a partner in a practice on an island most people save up years to visit. Arielle was not a woman in the background of that success. She had built her own. A project manager at TerraPower, a nuclear energy company backed by Bill Gates, she was running complex, high-stakes projects at a national level while simultaneously raising 2 boys under the age of 5 in a new state, far from wherever home used to be. 2 careers, 2 sons, 1 island, 1 marriage. On paper, it worked. But paper is not a marriage. Paper does not tell you what the kitchen sounds like at 10 p.m. after the children are finally down. Paper does not capture the temperature of a silence. And paper does not warn you when a man who has always been the loudest voice in the room starts to become something else, quieter in certain ways, more controlled, more watchful. The fracture, when it came quietly, as it almost always does. In December of 2024, just 3 months before the birthday hike, Gerhardt Konig accused his wife of having an affair. There is no evidence she had one. But that accusation, once spoken aloud, changed the air in their home permanently. According to Arielle's sworn court filings, what followed was not an argument that resolved. What followed was a shift. Gerhardt's jealousy, she said, became extreme. He began attempting to monitor her communications, her phone, her accounts, her messages, the kind of surveillance that presents itself first as love, as concern, as a man who needs reassurance, and then reveals itself, slowly, as something that has a different name entirely. They tried counseling, both individually and together. They sat across from a therapist as recently as the weeks before the attack, working on what they called their marriage. The sessions continued. The appointments were kept. The language of healing was used. But behind that language, Arielle alleged something far darker. In her petition for a restraining order, filed 3 days after she left the hospital, she stated that Gerhardt had sexually abused and assaulted her over a period of months. Not once, repeatedly, consistently, while therapy appointments were being scheduled, while the children were in the next room, while the world outside their front door saw a family that was trying. This is the part of cases like this one that is hardest to hold. The simultaneous truths, the couple in counseling and the abuse happening in the same house at the same time, the birthday trip that was planned and booked and prepared for, the man who kissed his children goodnight the night before and then packed a bag with 2 syringes in it. The birthday trip was Gerhardt's idea. He chose Oahu. He booked the hotel. He researched the hike. He is the one who suggested the Palipuka Trail, a trail known not only for its beauty, but for its sheer, lethal drop-offs. He chose that trail. He carried that bag. He made every decision that led to what happened next. The morning starts the way mornings on a Hawaiian birthday getaway are supposed to start. A hotel in Waikiki. Morning light through the window. The knowledge that your children are safe on Maui, being looked after, and that today, just today, belongs to you. Gerhardt suggests the hike. Arielle agrees. Why wouldn't she? They drive to the trailhead. They start walking. The Palipuka Trail on the Nuuanu Pali Ridge is the kind of trail that reminds you why people come to Hawaii. The air is cool at altitude. The Ko'olau mountain range rises around you, ancient and indifferent. And at the crest, on a clear morning, the windward coast of Oahu opens up below you in every direction. The ocean, the valley, the color of a place that feels like it was made before ordinary geography applied. And then the wind picks up, the trail narrows, and the edge appears. Arielle said she began to feel uneasy. The trail got thinner. The drop-offs on either side became visible. She told Gerhardt she didn't want to go further. He went ahead alone for a stretch, and when he came back to her, his demeanor was different. The way it is different when something has been decided. At some point, Arielle climbed a tree. One of those small, spontaneous things you do when you're trying to feel light on a day that is supposed to be about feeling light. He took a picture of her, smiling in a tree on her birthday. That photograph exists somewhere, a last normal thing. He suggested a selfie, close to the cliff edge. Arielle said she felt dizzy. She told him she didn't want to be near the edge. She asked to move away. She walked toward him. He grabbed both her arms, upper arms, both hands. A grip that was not a husband reaching for his wife. It was a grip with direction, with intent. He began pushing her backward, toward the trail's edge, toward the open air, toward the 1,000-foot drop into the valley floor below. He was yelling. The words that came out of his mouth in that moment were not the words of a man who had lost himself in grief or shock or heartbreak. They were the words of a man who was angry she wasn't going over. "Get back over there. I'm so f***ing sick of you." Gerhardt Konig, per court documents. Arielle said that for one fraction of a second, just one, she thought it might be a terrible, catastrophic joke, the kind of dark prank that doesn't land. She thought, he cannot be doing this. Not here, not on my birthday, not with our boys at home. And then she felt the direction of her own body in his hands. Backward. The edge was close. She could feel it close, and she understood. At first I thought he was joking, but I quickly realized he was seriously trying to make me fall off the cliff. Arielle Konig, sworn court petition. She did the only thing her body knew to do. She dropped. She threw herself down, off her feet, onto the ground, onto the dirt of the trail, taking away his leverage, his angle, his ability to push her forward, and he came down on top of her. And the real fight began. She was on the ground. He was on top of her. She was screaming, screaming his name, screaming for their children, screaming in the hope that someone, somewhere on this mountain, might hear her. The trade winds at Pali tear through the pass with the force of something that wants to erase you. She screamed against them anyway. And then Gerhardt Konig reached into his bag. Think about what that means. In the middle of a physical struggle on the ground of a cliff-edge trail, he stopped to reach into a bag. That action is not panic. That action is not instinct. That is a man executing a plan. A man who knows exactly where the next item is because he put it there himself. He pulled out the first syringe. An anesthesiologist. A physician who has spent his professional life walking into operating rooms with the clinical authority to render human beings unconscious, to control breathing, to slow a heartbeat to a precise and manageable rhythm, or to accelerate it past the threshold of safety. A man who knows, better than almost anyone on earth, what a syringe in the wrong hands can do. He tried to inject his wife with it, on a cliff trail, on her birthday. She fought for it. In the chaos of the struggle, his weight on her, her hands fighting, her body trying to survive, she grabbed the syringe and threw it away from them. It landed somewhere on the trail. Gone. Then she saw him reach for the bag again. The second syringe. She bit his forearm. Hard. The kind of bite that is not self-defense in theory. It is self-defense in practice, in the language of a body that understands it is running out of options. He paused, for just a moment. The struggle shifted, and he picked up a rock, jagged, heavy, lava rock, pulled from the surface of the trail that was built from the same ancient earth that had been cooling in this place for 10,000 years. He grabbed it. He grabbed the back of her head, and he hit her. Once. She kept screaming. Twice. She was still fighting. 3 times. She said his name. 4 times. She begged him to think about the boys. 10 times. Prosecutors allege he struck her in the head with that rock approximately 10 times. He smashed her face into the ground between blows. The lacerations opened across her scalp. Her face was destroyed. Her left thumb broke. The physical memory of her hands trying to shield herself, trying to push back, trying to exist in a world where the man hitting her was still, somehow, her husband. She had surgery, plural, not a stitch, not a bandage. Surgery. And then, somewhere behind them, around a bend in the trail, footsteps. 2 women were on the Pali-Puka trail that morning. They were not Arielle's friends. They had not been following the case. There was no case yet. They were 2 ordinary people who had chosen an ordinary hike on an ordinary Monday morning in March. They heard screaming. Now understand what that moment asks of a person. In that instant, you have choices. You can assume it's something innocent. You can assume it will resolve itself. You can turn around, go back down the trail, and tell yourself it was nothing, because the alternative, walking toward an unknown sound of human distress on a narrow cliff trail, is not something most of us are wired to do without hesitation. One of them, identified in police documents only as Amanda, walked toward the screaming. She came around a bend in the trail, and she saw a man crouched over a woman on the ground, a rock in his hand, blood. When Gerhardt Konig looked up and saw Amanda standing there, he stopped. He stood up. He stepped back from his wife. Arielle Konig looked up at the woman who had just appeared on the trail like something impossible, and said the clearest, most devastating sentence she could form. "He is trying to kill me. He is hitting me in the head with a rock." Amanda's companion called 911 immediately. Emergency services were dispatched, and Gerhardt Konig, who had planned this trip, who had packed those syringes, who had chosen this trail and this morning and this cliff, turned and walked away. He left his wife lying on the ground, bleeding, with 2 strangers standing over her and sirens on their way. He did not run down the mountain. He did not flee to the airport. He wandered. For 7 hours, Gerhardt Konig moved through the area near the Pali Trail while police searched for him. And at 6:10 in the evening, officers spotted him walking along Nuanu Pali Drive, minutes from the scene. He was taken into custody after a brief foot pursuit. A man with resources, with a rental car, with every mechanism of escape available to him, and he went almost nowhere. He walked in circles near the cliff where he had left his wife for dead, for the better part of an entire day. What was he doing? What was he thinking? We don't know for certain, but we know who he called, and what he said when they picked up. Sometime during those 7 hours, while Arielle was in surgery at Queen's Medical Center in Honolulu, while their 2 boys were still on Maui with the nanny, while police were combing the area around the Pali Trail looking for the man who had just tried to murder his wife, Gerhardt Konig opened his phone. He FaceTimed his adult son, his son from a previous relationship, a young man who answered the call and saw his father's face on the screen, and saw, on that face and those hands, the evidence of what the morning had been. And Gerhardt told him, "I just tried to kill Ari, but she got away." Gerhardt Konig FaceTimed to his adult son. He told his son he wanted to kill himself, that he was going to jump off a cliff. Hold that image. A father calling his child, to confess that he had just tried to murder the mother of his youngest children, with the evidence still visible on his body, not calling a lawyer, not calling a friend, not turning himself in, calling his son. As if the act required a witness, as if some part of him needed someone who loved him to know what he had done, and perhaps to stop him from doing the next thing. He didn't jump, he wandered, and the police found him. He was arrested, charged with attempted murder in the second degree, and held on $5 million bail. 4 days later, a grand jury indicted him. The same day, a judge signed Arielle's temporary restraining order, barring Gerhardt Konig from any contact with her, their 2-year-old, or their 4-year-old. Dr. Gerhardt Konig appeared before a judge via video for his arraignment. He pleaded not guilty. There is a particular kind of violence that leaves no marks. The kind that happens in kitchens and hallways and bedrooms while the children sleep and the neighborhood is quiet, and there is nothing on the outside of the house to tell you what is happening inside it. In her sworn petition for a restraining order, filed just 72 hours after leaving the hospital, Arielle Konig began to describe what the inside of that house had looked like for months. The December accusation of infidelity was the opening move, unfounded, unverified, but once spoken, impossible to unsay. What followed, Arielle stated under oath, was an escalating pattern of control, jealousy that became extreme, surveillance of her communications, an attempt to dominate the architecture of her daily life in ways that are textbook in their design and devastating in their execution. And then, far more severe than jealousy or surveillance, she alleged repeated sexual abuse and assault over a period of months. Months during which they were also attending couples therapy. Months during which, to the outside world, they were a couple in counseling, which sounds like a couple trying, which sounds like effort and humility and hope. This is the feature of cases like this one that domestic violence researchers return to again and again: the overlap. The way that abuse and the performance of healing can exist simultaneously, in the same house, around the same kitchen table, with the same therapist's appointment on the shared calendar. The birthday trip was planned in that context. Gerhardt chose the destination. He booked the accommodation. He selected the trail. And before they left the house, with the boys asleep, with the nanny arrangements confirmed, with the bags packed and waiting by the door, he put 2 syringes into his hiking bag. At what point did he decide? A week before? A month before? The night he made the reservation? We cannot know the exact moment, but we know it was before they boarded the plane. We know it was before the hotel, before the morning coffee, before the happy birthday. He decided before all of it. And then he performed every ordinary moment of that trip while holding that decision inside him, and waited for the trail to get narrow enough. Of every detail in this case, the one that investigators, legal analysts, and ordinary people cannot stop returning to is the simplest question in the world. What was in the syringes? Gerhardt Konig is not a man who had to look up which substances render a person unconscious. He did not have to search the internet, did not have to guess, did not have to improvise. He spent his career in operating rooms, managing the precise pharmacological boundary between sleep and death. He knows the doses. He knows the compounds. He knows, with a specificity that almost no one outside his profession possesses, exactly what a loaded syringe can do to a body on a cliff trail, far from emergency care, in the time it takes to tip someone over an edge. The substance has not been publicly confirmed. Whether the syringes were recovered from the trail, whether their contents were identified, whether that information has been shared with prosecutors, none of this has been officially disclosed as of the time this script was written. But the architecture of the plan tells us something. The cliff was the primary method, A fall from 1,000 feet in a remote location is ruled an accident more often than it is ruled a murder. The syringes were the contingency. What you use if the fall doesn't happen, if she grabs something, if someone comes around the bend too soon. And the rock was the last resort. The thing you grab when everything else has failed and you are out of time and out of options, and there is a woman on the ground who is still alive when she should not be. 3 methods, 1 bag, 1 morning, 1 physician who understood exactly what each of them would do. That is not a man who snapped. That is a man who prepared. Gerhardt's attorneys sought bail. The argument was familiar. A man with ties to the community, a professional career, no prior record. A man who posed no flight risk. Judge Paul Wong disagreed. The judge noted that Gerhardt had evaded police for 7 hours following the attack, that he had made statements suggesting suicidal intent, that the evidence before the court demonstrated a direct, documented, and continuing danger to the victim. Bail was denied. He remains held on $5 million. Arielle filed for divorce. The restraining order bars Gerhardt from contact with his wife and both of their children, the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old, who are, right now, growing up on Maui with a mother who survived something that was designed not to be survivable. The trial, when it comes, will be watched by the medical community, by domestic violence advocates who have spent decades trying to articulate what this case demonstrates so plainly, that abuse is a pattern of escalation, that the warning signs exist, and that by the time the violence becomes visible to the outside world, it has usually been invisible inside the home for a very long time, and it will be watched by everyone who ever trusted someone completely. Everyone who has ever gotten into a car driven by a person they love. Everyone who has ever followed someone up a mountain because they had no reason not to. Arielle Konig went to Oahu for her birthday. She went because the man she married planned it, and she trusted that plan the way you trust the floor beneath your feet, without thinking about it, because you have never had a reason to. She came home with surgical scars on her scalp, a broken thumb, and the knowledge that the syringes in that bag had not gotten there by accident. Her boys are 2 and 4. They will not remember this year. They will not remember the nanny, or the overnight, or the phone call that came after. They are young enough that this might exist for them, eventually, only as a story someone older tells them when they are ready. Or they will one day find the court documents themselves. They will read their mother's sworn account. They will read about the cliff and the rock and the 10 blows, and the stranger on the trail named Amanda, who walked toward the screaming instead of away from it. And they will read their father's words, spoken to their half-brother over a FaceTime call, with the evidence of the morning still visible on his hands. "I just tried to kill Ari, but she got away. He said she got away." As if she were a problem he had failed to solve. As if survival, her survival, were an outcome he needed to account for. She did not get away. She fought. She bit and screamed and grabbed a syringe and threw it and dropped herself to the ground and called out the names of her children as weapons against the man who was trying to end her. And 2 strangers heard her, and one of them walked toward the sound. We do not know yet what the trial will conclude. We do not know what was in those syringes. We do not know exactly when, in the weeks or months before March 24th, Gerhardt Konig made the decision that became that morning. But we know this much. He packed that bag the night before. He zipped it closed. He set it by the door. He went to bed. He slept. And in the morning, he made coffee. And he smiled. And he said, "Happy birthday." Think about that the next time someone who loves you makes a plan. Think about the gap between a face and what lives behind it. Think about Amanda, walking toward a sound on a trail she chose by accident, and what the world looks like in the version where she doesn't.